Best Female Video.
And the Moon Man
goes to Taylor Swift.
I always dreamed about what it would be like to maybe win one of these someday, but I never actually thought that would happen.
Yo, Taylor, I'm really happy for you. I'm gonna let you finish. But Beyonce had one of the best videos of all time.
Music fans are criticizing singer Kanye West.
He's a jackass.
I wish he would come take one of my awards, like a black as eye.
I was fortunate enough to meet your mom. What do you think she would have said about this?
And I want to show you how you all look like beautiful stars tonight.
With 4 highly praised albums under his belt, Kanye West was seen as one of the most talented young musicians in the music industry in 2009. While he had experienced a brief moment of controversy 4 years prior, Kanye was relatively well received by the general public at this point in time. However, one night would change his career forever. Kanye, under the influence of Hennessy, would hop on stage at the 2009 MTV Awards and interrupt Taylor Swift's acceptance speech for Best Female Video. Following the incident, Ye would become public enemy number 1. But as the world would soon learn, Kanye does his best work when his back is against the wall. Kanye's infamous VMA moment would lead to the release of what is widely regarded as one of the greatest hip-hop records of all time. Looking back at a moment that defined pop culture and an album that defined a genre, this is the story of My Beautiful, Dark Twisted Fantasy. In 2008, Kanye West would release 808s and Heartbreak, following a breakup with a longtime girlfriend, and more significantly the loss of his mother, Donda. The album acted as a venue for Kanye to voice his sadness, and would truly impact a generation of future artists with Ye's bold use of autotune. But what many people don't know is that prior to all the tragedies in his life in 2007, Kanye had far more different plans for his 4th studio album. People commonly refer to Kanye's first 3 records as the Dropout Trilogy. However, there was supposed to be one more record to close out the narrative told from the college dropout to graduation. The 4th album was supposed to be called Good Ass Job, but the unfortunate passing of Donda West would lead Kanye to change up his plans and create 808s. After 808s released, some believed that Kanye was going to go back to the Good Ass Job concept and finish out the college dropout story. However, Kanye actually had another plan in mind for his follow-up to 808s and Heartbreak. In late 2008, Ye would participate in an interview with French fashion magazine Elle. In the interview, he would say that he planned on making a seasonal album titled Winter, Spring, Summer, Fall. Now, not many people are aware of this because the magazine with the interview was published in French, and back in 2008, Kanye didn't really have the cult-like following that he has today. But no matter what Kanye's plans were musically to follow up 808s, a major event in 2009 would not only alter his mentality for music going forward, but also his life as a whole. On September 13th, 2009, Kanye West would attend the 2009 VMA Awards with then-girlfriend Amber Rose. It's important to note that Kanye would be seen drinking Hennessy on the red carpet before the event. And although Kanye has gone on record multiple times now to say that alcohol had nothing to do with what he did, I think it's fair to say the liquor gave him a little bit of courage on this night. As Taylor Swift was awarded the Moon Man for Best Female Video, Kanye would interrupt her acceptance speech on stage and advocate for Beyoncé's Single Ladies MV. Kanye, showered in booze from the crowd, would shrug his shoulders, hand the mic back to Taylor, and walk off stage. He may not have known it at the time, but this moment would change the trajectory of Kanye's career forever. Following the event, Kanye would go on various programs to apologize for his actions as he was bashed by the public. The hate he would receive after interrupting Taylor would be immense, coming from the general public and even fellow musicians.
I wish he would come take one of my awards so I could black his eye.
Some people would even go as far as wishing death on Kanye, which would take an extremely heavy toll on Ye's mental state. Comparing himself to Kurt Cobain, Kanye years later would describe the immense depression he faced following the VMA incident.
To think like to be me that day afterwards, like how could someone deal with that? And that's what I say when you think about the McQueens and the Kurt Cobains, and it's like it was a thing on Twitter where it said I had died, and people were like, "Good, we're happy he died."
Oh my
like,
gosh.
It's like, whoa, you happy he died?
When I was in my darkest times and darkest place, after losing my mother, after Twitter blow up, they said, "Die, nigga, die." It's fans like you that kept me alive.
As every news tabloid continued to slam Kanye, it was clear that he had become public enemy number one. Someone would even show then-President Barack Obama Kanye's infamous VMA interruption, to which Obama would react by calling Kanye a jackass.
The young lady seems like a perfectly nice person. She's getting her award. What's he doing?
Why would he
up there?
do that?
He's a jackass.
Due to the overwhelming negative press, Kanye would be forced to cancel a planned Fame Kills tour with Katy Perry and soon leave the country to avoid the paparazzi. This idea of traveling came from Mos Def, and Ye would find solace in Japan, Rome, and Italy while not working on any music.
It's a pretty bugged out story. I literally left America. I stopped doing music altogether. I just took some time. I went to Japan just so I can get away from paparazzi altogether. And then in November, I moved to Rome and just lived there.
According to Noah Callahan Beaver, the editor-in-chief for Complex Magazine, Ye would say on a phone call 2 days after the VMA incident that he was done with music entirely. Instead of getting in the studio, Ye would shift his focus to fashion, working undercover with the brand Fendi. But before long, Kanye would begin to conceptualize ideas for what his sound would be like following the very pop-esque 808s and Heartbreak. Kanye would stick with the melodies, but infuse them with hip-hop drums as he got back in the studio and began working on music once again in early 2010.
Chris Martin would talk to me about the drums, the black drums and stuff, the 808s, and how rock wouldn't have that. And for us to juxtapose and crash the guitar sounds with synthesizer sounds, all with strings, with cellos, with classic Broadway melodies, with very little kid type. If I was a little kid, I would make a song called Toast for the Douchebags. That would be what I would sing in gym or something against 808 drums. And then hard Wu-Tang sounds above it with amazing raps, and then with poetry and everything. And that's what this art form. These are paintings, especially for this album.
But Kanye understood he couldn't just drop a random song out of nowhere. People were watching his every move following the VMA incident, and critics were sure as hell going to be ready to bash anything he put out. He knew that in order to redeem himself in the eyes of the general public, he had to put out an album that was better than perfect. And he would craft this project in Oahu, Hawaii. As he worked on the record, Kanye would fly out numerous collaborators, those including Kid Cudi, Jay-Z, Nicki Minaj, Pusha T, Drake, Beyonce, Mike Dean, Rick Ross, and more. As they entered the workspace, they would essentially be joining Kanye in self-exile, in isolation from the outside world and press. Kanye would famously have a list of studio rules pertaining to the sound of the record, as well as things that could potentially damage the vibe in the studio. Sound engineers would even have a dress code, wearing all black suits while working on the music.
No, I was just impressed. First of all, everybody in the studio had suits on. Everybody.
You're kidding me.
I'm serious.
Was that a prereq?
Yo, I thought he had flown in a bunch of guys from Europe or something, but all the engineers and everybody was in black suits and white shirts and black tie. He set up a mood.
Right.
Yeah.
That when you walked in there, you felt this mood.
As Chris Rock said there, Kanye created a mood in the studio, and it's clear from the dress code, from the studio rules, that Ye was focused on making this record amazing because his career literally depended on it.
I really put myself in a zone that I felt like my life was dependent on the success of this album. You know, and with that being the case, I said, you know what? No matter what anybody says about me, they won't. I can write something that can make someone that hates me the most have to really respect or love the song.
Kanye would rent out the Avex studio permanently, and according to RZA, who worked on the album as a producer, Ye would work in the studio for at least 12 hours a day, sometimes even sleeping there.
Kanye would get up in the morning, have breakfast with a whole team of people. They go to the gym, they work out together. You know what I mean? Then they'll do a little charity work. Then they go to the studio, and they'll go in the studio, be the first one there and the last one to leave.
The public would get their first listen at Kanye's new work on July 1st of 2010, as Ye would release Power as a single in anticipation of his 5th studio record. Fans expected the album to be called Good Ass Job, but as Ye and his crew continued to work on the new record, they realized that the old title really didn't fit the theme anymore. Kanye would take to social media in July, announcing that the album was no longer going to be called Good Ass Job. The new title was yet to be announced, but fans would get even more previews as to what the album would sound like thanks to Good Fridays. On August 20th, Kanye would begin to release a song every Friday on his website, calling the weekly program Good Fridays. This amped up hype for Ye's upcoming album, as unreleased songs would drop every Friday for free. Some of these tracks would make the album, some wouldn't, but either way, this program successfully warmed the public up to hearing Kanye's music once again. In September of 2010, Kanye would return to the very stage that changed his career and debut perhaps his most important song of all time. At the 2010 VMA Awards, Kanye would walk on stage to his sampling machine and play what would soon become iconic piano notes in a red suit. Ye would be surrounded by ballerinas as he sang about his douchey personality, with the lyrics playing off of how the media portrayed him following the Taylor Swift incident. Pusha T would join him on stage, performing his cold-hearted verse and showing the world the start of what would soon become an iconic pairing. Kanye would end the performance in muttered auto-tune, returning to the public eye in a dramatic way and impressing many with his new sound. The song he performed, titled Runaway, would officially be released as a single on October 4th. The following day, on October 5th, Kanye announced on Twitter that his upcoming album was to be titled My Beautiful, Dark Twisted Fantasy, with a release date of November 22nd. However, a month prior to the release date, Kanye would learn that his planned artwork for the album's cover would be banned. The original cover saw Kanye having sexual relations with a phoenix on a couch. Although it was a painting, the piece was seen as just too inappropriate and would not be displayed in retail stores such as Walmart. You gotta think, back in 2010, we didn't have no Apple Music or Spotify. Physical sales, especially in stores, were extremely important to an album's success. Kanye would be forced to censor the artwork, but the original piece perfectly represents the album's narrative and title. The final single released for My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy would be Monster on October 23rd. Along with the single, Kanye would release a 35-minute short film to coincide with the upcoming record, titled Runaway. The movie, directed by Hype Williams, truly showed Kanye's artistic ability beyond music. The score would give viewers a preview into what the album would sound like and complement the dramatic visuals and story. Kanye would come across a beautiful phoenix as she fell from the sky. However, in order to return to her home world, she would have to leave Kanye and burn herself. The narrative paralleled Kanye's career, as he related to the phoenix in the process of leaving the limelight and creating My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy in Hawaii. Finally, on November 22nd of 2010, Kanye West would release his comeback album, My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy. With a runtime of 1 hour and 9 minutes, the 13-track record acts as Kanye's return to the public eye after controversy. But bigger than that, It acts as a stepping stone for Ye, as after the release of My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy, Kanye went from simply an artist to a music icon. Following 2010, he would become bigger than simply a musician. He would continue to innovate in other fields, as well as getting tied up in numerous controversies. Following the public accepting Kanye once again, he would go on to say that he was not sorry for his actions at the 2009 VMA Awards. In his eyes, there's truly a flaw in music awards show culture, and looking back, he wasn't entirely wrong. Interrupting an acceptance speech is improper, especially in an award show setting. But Kanye was simply doing what we all know him to do today, which is speaking what he believes to be the truth.
That night when I went on stage was the beginning of the end of my life.
Let's go.
Lady Gaga canceled the tour the next day. You know what night I'm talking about. When I just said what everybody else is thinking. So if I get in trouble for saying the truth, what's being said the rest of the time?
What's so arrogant about that moment? If anything, it's selfless. If anything, I'm walking around now with half an arm trying to sell albums and having it go on and then walk in rooms and be afraid of like my food getting spat in and people, I ain't lost all total respect for you. And no one wants to just sit and look at the reality. Let's just look at the 2 + 2 = 4. Okay, it's the best album, it's the best video of the year. No, it's the best video of the decade. The most influential, most memorable. You can't tell me anything that we remember more in the past 10 years. So the audacity of it losing anything, it should be like Lauryn Hill when she won all those Grammys, you just couldn't lose. It should be like, because guarantee if there's the other way around, and Taylor Swift was 12, 15 years into the game and on her 40th video or 50th video and she made the video of her career, do you think she would have lost to a brand new artist? Hell no.
Kanye took all of his frustrations with the media coverage of the VMA situation as well as cancel culture before it was even a thing, and put all of his energy towards creating what many believe to be one of the greatest hip-hop albums of all time. This rebound truly set the precedent for Ye's polarizing identity. You may not like everything he says or everything he may do, but almost everyone can appreciate the art that Kanye puts out. The release of My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy truly took Kanye from being public enemy #1 to being regarded as one of the most talented musicians in his and any other generation. On the album, Ye reflects on his public scrutiny, ego, and wild lifestyle as he takes the listener on a journey of a tragic love story, with the relationship acting as a symbol representing Western culture and the American dream. But in order to better understand the narrative of Kanye West's magnum opus, we must dissect My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy track by track. The album kicks off with the opening track, Dark Fantasy. Nicki Minaj performs the opening narration, taking inspiration from Roald Dahl's Cinderella, but spinning the fairy tale to set up the themes of this album. Throughout the entire Dropout trilogy, Kanye is chasing fame. However, now that he has achieved it, he's realizing that life in the limelight isn't exactly what he believed it to be. A piano key hits as Justin Vernon of Bon Iver sings the chorus.
Can we get much higher? So high.
This line again highlights Kanye's fame and kind of creates a feeling of reflection. You get the feeling hearing this that you're kind of looking down at a mountain from a high place, which actually plays off the sample that the chorus takes inspiration from. This is also the first collaboration between Ye and Bon Iver, which is very important because Dark Fantasy is considered to many as one of the most important Kanye albums of all time, potentially the greatest, and Justin Vernon plays a pivotal role in the sound of this entire record. According to Vernon, Kanye and himself first got in contact when Ye wanted to sample the Bon Iver track, Woods. From there, Ye invited Justin out to Hawaii, where the two would bond in the studio over their unique uses of autotune. Also on the chorus is Teyana Taylor, who was originally only invited out to Oahu to check out some clothes. However, she was very ambitious to get on this record, and after impressing Kanye with her vocal abilities, Ye had her help with the intro and chorus of this opening song. As the beat kicks in, Kanye spits his first verse, speaking on his fabricated fantasy of what fame would be back when he grew up in Chicago. In the second verse, Ye acknowledges his connection with the youth of the world and almost compares himself to a teacher with his ability to make people believe in themselves. Kanye also references alcohol, and as we've discussed, a lot of people believe that Hennessy bottle led up to Kanye interrupting Taylor at the VMAs. Although Kanye's denied that following the incident, this line still hits incredibly hard knowing the immense depression Ye faced after the controversy. People, when faced with stress or situations where everyone's hating on you, sometimes even giving you a death threat, a lot of people turn to the bottle, but Kanye has learned the hard way that drinking and popping pills does not solve your problems. The issues caused by the crisis in his life are still present once the substances leave his body. The chorus hits one last time as the listener feels a vibe of a story about to unfold. A grand fairy tale feeling as we are about to get a peek at what was once Kanye's fantasy that is now turned into his beautiful, dark, and twisted reality. Track 2 is Gorgeous. This song's instrumental is purely guitar-based, sampling the track You Showed Me by Enoch Light. The track's title, Gorgeous, is of course ironic, as on the song Kanye takes digs at America's media coverage as well as social injustice after experiencing public scrutiny firsthand. Kid Cudi is on the chorus here, matching the luscious guitar riff perfectly, but actually Cudi wasn't originally going to be on this track. So the story goes that Cudi was in the studio in Hawaii, and he heard this beat. He absolutely loved it, and he asked Kanye if he could get on the song. Ye asked if he had an idea for the song, to which Cudi said yes. In reality, he had no plan, but he made it work. According to Cudi himself, Ye spat his general idea for the message he wanted to put out on the track, and Cudi put that concept into his own lines to make the chorus here. Cudi on the chorus sings about pursuing fame and the ambition that one has before officially making it.
Ain't no question if I want it, I need it.
After Kanye became famous, he must worry about now keeping his spot, especially after the public turned their backs on it. All of Kanye's verses on this track are amazing. He's rapping his ass off, mainly speaking about social injustice in America. His verses here about the oppression African Americans face in day-to-day life is inspired by the hate he received following the VMA incident, a lot of which was rooted in racism. Ye compared the coverage of the VMA incident as well as the way that the public beat him down about it to that of Emmett Till.
When the girl, the Grammys,
Taylor Swift
moment happened, they beat you up in a way that I would have never.
Yeah, like modern day internet version of Emmett Till, right? I want you all to Google Emmett Till, if anyone knows this story. But it's basically a media neo Emmett Till situation. Some guys that saw that he whistled like at this white girl, and he got beat to death, and his mother left an open casket because they wanted to show the world what they had done to him. And I remember seeing that in Jet magazine.
So Emmett Till was a kid from the city during the segregation era of America who traveled down south. Now during this period, this is where you had, it was really separate but equal. You had the water fountains for, it was just that bullshit. And you essentially, in the city, all that was more relaxed. People weren't as much on their toes. A lot of it was more integrated, society was, as a whole. Down south, the etiquette was so much more different. But Emmett was from the city. So when he traveled down south to Mississippi with his family, he wasn't really on his toes when interacting with other people of different races. Long story short, he goes into some convenience store in Mississippi, and he flirts with some white girl who works the counter or something. Turns out her dad owns the store. The girl tells her dad about the interaction. He's not having it. He goes to where Emmett's staying, and along with his other racist accomplices, essentially beats this 14-year-old to death. In the same sense to where Emmett Till wasn't really on his toes worrying about what other people think of him, Kanye, during the whole VMA incident, was kind of free. He was saying what he believed at the time. He wasn't really worried about what other people around him were going to think. He was just speaking his mind. And I say a lot of the hate Kanye received for the VMA incident was rooted in racism, and when I say that, I mean, you look at the stuff people were tweeting at him, those death threats, a lot of them were people, dropping the N-word, a lot of slurs involved, as well as the media running with this story that America just ate up. The innocent country white girl gets interrupted by the intimidating rapper. Just ridiculous. Ye in his second verse talks about the idea of hip-hop enlightening listeners on the African-American struggle. Kanye, like many people, believe that the VMA incident and the hate surrounding it that was directed towards him was really propelled and blown out of proportion by the racist stereotypes that these tabloids really pushed. But by covering racism in his 3 verses here, Kanye is defying the hate and showing pride in a very empowering fashion. Raekwon of Wu-Tang Clan fame has a verse on the tail end of this track, going along with the theme of wanting fame, getting it, and maintaining your spot in the music industry. Interestingly enough, Raekwon had no interest in collaborating with Kanye musically whatsoever, but would really be pushed to fly out to Hawaii and meet Ye by RZA. When first meeting Kanye, Raekwon just kind of gave him some advice, but after he heard some of the stuff that was going to end up on Dark Fantasy, he decided, okay, let me get a feature on this track. As Cudi repeats the chorus one last time, the words hit so much harder following Ye's verses. The last line on the chorus and the last line we hear on this track refers to the media's relentless bashing of Kanye following the VMA incident. No matter how many times he apologizes, they will not let people forget about the VMA moment. They will not let Kanye move on. They're relentless to bring him down, constantly throwing his mistakes in his face when he's trying to better himself. The media and its tendency to focus on the negatives tells a lot about the American society that Ye is critiquing on this song. More people will click on an article about a controversy or a tragedy rather than something like people donating to a charity or doing something in general that's positive, creating the exact opposite of a society that can be considered gorgeous. Track 3 is Power. This song, according to Kanye, took 5,000 man-hours to create and is incredibly built around very unique samples. The track opens up with applause, as a chant sampled from Continent No. 6's Afro-America builds the atmosphere. Kanye out the gate is at his most confident. After his powerful intro, the other sample I'm going to highlight, which is King Crimson's 21st Century Schizoid Man, hits following the chorus. 21st Century Schizoid Man. The song 21st Century Schizoid Man criticizes those in power during the Vietnam War, and Kanye utilizes the song to both take shots at those in power and critique the antics of society in the 21st century. We as a people, especially in America, put so much power in the hands of celebrities. We give them so much attention, put them on such a pedestal, despite the fact that, just like us, they're simply human. Kanye is questioning that concept while at the same time claiming his spot as a pop culture icon, bragging about his status and the power that he holds. This in and of itself is a contradiction, but the contradiction is intentional, as on the track Kanye says he's tripping off the power. He's experiencing a power trip. We all know that power comes with fame, and Kanye was all over the news following the 2009 VMA incident. Although the coverage was mainly negative, he was still on everyone's television, and because of Kanye's massive ego, he was empowered by the attention. He was empowered by how his actions got everyone worked up.
No one man should have all that power.
Kanye is so dangerous because he is fueled and given power by the haters who continue to throw shade at him. Keep in mind that this is the first piece of music Kanye put out post 2009 VMAs. This is the track, the single, that broke Kanye's self-exile, and for the lyrics to be Kanye at his most cockiest, all while he backs up every single lyric by this track just being so impressive production-wise, it's just so fitting. Kanye references his self-exile in his second verse, but despite referencing his time off to better himself, he's extremely arrogant throughout his first 2 verses. Ye is taking shots at people who spoke on his name. He's really holding nothing back. Kanye's arrogance hits an all-time high on his third verse, as a slow piano creeps under his frantic, ego-driven proclamation. However, this proclamation is more like a call for help, as Kanye's ego cracks and he opens up about his suicidal thoughts spawned by his status. Kanye's last line here says this:
I got the power, make your life so exciting.
But as his speech echoes, the reverb makes exciting sound like suicide. Mike Dean performs an insane synth solo as Kanye contemplates ending it all. Fame brought him to the dance, but at the same time it's also put him in the position to receive all the scrutiny that he's endured. Kanye dreamed about possessing this power back in Chicago as referenced on the intro track, but the fantasy is not what he believed it to be. He has gone mad with power. As Ye laughs villainously, he soaks in the misery that fame has brought him. The king is dead, as Kanye realizes at the end of this track that it takes true inner strength, true power, to let the power that he fantasized about so long go. Following that is the beautiful All of the Lights interlude, featuring only 2 instruments, a piano and a cello. Playing piano on this interlude as well as the official song is none other than Elton John. Kanye and Elton's connection goes back to 2007 when Kanye sampled Elton's track Someone Saved My Life Tonight when creating Good Morning for Graduation. Elton was brought to Hawaii by none other than Malik Yusuf. That's right, Mr. I Am Heaven. And according to Malik, a lot of people who were in the studio for Dark Fantasy, which, keep in mind, obviously were mostly hip-hop artists, were really shocked when Elton arrived. Malik said that people legitimately laughed at him when he brought Elton John in, saying it wasn't hip-hop, what are you doing, this is a hip-hop record. And Malik made the connection that this just isn't a hip-hop record, this is music, this is art. Elton's partner would even be agitated as their stay in Hawaii got stretched out as Elton got comfy in the studio, and one of those days was Elton's partner's birthday. But despite his partner's resentment as well as the skepticism from those in Kanye's camp, Elton would play a pivotal role in providing the basic melody for All of the Lights. Elton himself would speak on working with Kanye in an interview with Rolling Stone, saying, "In the studio with Kanye when I was doing that in Honolulu, he was just on fire. It was amazing to watch. You knew you were in the presence of greatness. I knew once I heard 4 or 5 tracks from that in the studio, I knew it was going to be a motherfucker of a record."
I was lucky enough to play and sing on his 5th studio album, My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy. I actually put my piano and vocal on in Honolulu, and then about a week before the album came out, he phoned me from Germany to say, "Can you put some more vocals on?" So I was in LA and I went down to the studio and I said to the engineer, "Isn't this album coming out in a week?" He said, "Yeah, there's about 6 people mixing it right now." And this track, the whole album, in fact, I think of all the hip-hop albums I've ever heard, this is probably my favorite. I just think it's a work of brilliance. It's the hip-hop Sgt. Pepper, as far as I'm concerned.
This interlude brings us to track 5, All of the Lights. Continuing the motif of fame, horns and trumpets fill the listener's ears as the intro hits. All of the lights! The lights refer to flashing lights that a celebrity might see when the paparazzi snap in a picture, or maybe even the lights hit the stage as an artist is performing live. Rihanna is a big part of this track, and when Kanye first played her what was already done of My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy, what he was working with, she specifically loved this track. Later that day at about 2 a.m., Kanye would call Rihanna and say, "Come back to the studio." And although it was late, Rihanna couldn't have been happier because she knew she was going to be put on All of the Lights. On the hook, Rihanna encourages people to turn up the lights and expose the negative aspects of life in the limelight. As Kanye has said many times on this album so far, fame isn't exactly what many believe it to be. And although what Rihanna's saying on the hook is negative, her tone is the opposite. It's more optimistic, it's grandiose. Kanye's tone completely opposes that as he starts his first verse. He describes a scenario where he has a falling out with a woman, and it leads to abuse as well as jail time. Similar to the VMA incident, Kanye made a poor decision when hitting his girl in this toxic relationship. Because of his actions, his spot as the man of the family is up in question. He can't see his daughter, and his girl has already replaced him with another man. And this perfectly parallels Kanye's position at this point in his career. In the context of this song, Kanye's daughter, as described in the track, is really a symbol for music. Kanye has to fight back for his position as his daughter's father in the same way that he has to show everyone in the music industry that he is one of the greatest artists of all time with this album. Kid Cudi's lines personify Kanye's mindset in both the fictional story told in this track as well as real life. He has to get his life back on track to see his daughter again, aka be respected in the industry following controversy. Fergie has some lines personifying the depth to which our protagonist has fallen, but after hitting rock bottom, there's only one place to go, and that's back to the top. On the outro, Elton John comes in with some vocals speaking on Kanye's redemption. It's hard for someone with Kanye's ego to simply say sorry and apologize. But even when he did and he put his pride to the side following the VMA incident, many people continued to bash him. He still received a lot of hate. So by the line, "I tried to tell you, but all I could say is," being interrupted by Rihanna's harmonizing, that to me symbolizes Kanye saying that the music, specifically this album, is his formal apology to the public.
Dark Fantasy is me almost like an apology record. And it was like this, me going back and spending 6 dedicated months and kind of piecing together what people liked about me to make an entire bouquet that they loved, that was the most listenable, that was the least challenging, that was that, and blah, blah, blah. And people want to talk about how much they loved that, like it was Thanksgiving dinner.
Track 6 is Monster. The title of this track plays on the reputation Kanye had after the VMA situation, and how all the artists on the song are quote-unquote monsters on the mic. Corny, but it makes for a classic. Justin Vernon kicks off the track with an eerie intro monologue, setting up the numerous amounts of horror movie references that will be heard throughout this track. He also shoots the lights out, following all of the lights, signaling that Kanye has stepped away from the center of attention and the face that he puts on for the public is gone, as his true darker side is showing. The intro ends with this line:
"Are you willing to sacrifice your life?"
Kind of calling back to Power, where at the end Kanye had to kill his own ego in order to save his true self. All the monsters on the mic on this track have their power because of fame. Rick Ross has the first verse on this joint, and he boasts of his villainous status. Kanye does the same on the chorus, nudging the public to stop the gossip, as he confirms that he is every bit of the ego-driven anomaly that they say he is, and his profit proves his skill. If you take everything that people say to you directly to the heart, it'll absolutely eat you up inside. Kanye learned that the hard way, and is now embracing his monster-like status that people see him as. Kanye overall in his verse on this track is saying that he cannot be controlled. He will do what he wants, and he will say whatever he believes the truth is. He closes out his verse with one of the hardest lines on this album.
"I'm living in the future, so the present is my past. My presence is a present, kiss my ass."
While many people tried to cancel Kanye after his presence at the 2009 VMAs, Kanye snaps back, saying that his presence and the fact that he decided to show up is a gift, let alone that he gave them a moment to run with. Jay-Z follows Kanye's verse, listing off famous monsters and alluding to the idea that his drug-dealing past is what made him the monster he is today. Potentially the most iconic verse on this album, let alone this song, comes from Nicki Minaj. Nicki had been making waves with 3 impressive mixtapes under her belt, and in 2009, Lil Wayne would recognize her talent and get her signed to his label, Young Money. Nicki's verse on Monster, in her own words, would lead to a rebirth of women in mainstream hip-hop. In the same interview with Genius, Nicki would discuss Ye's reaction to her legendary verse, as well as the idea that she didn't even know Jay-Z was on the song until it officially released.
It was just like, you know, the rebirth. really. And I think that song and that was a moment in time. I've never seen anything like that happen.
Yeah.
I remember Kanye called me and he said, I know this is good. I know niggas is gonna say this is the best verse of my album. I'm taking a chance by putting this shit on here, man. You know what I'm saying? And you know Kanye is so like dramatic. He's so colorful the way he talks. Months had gone by and Kanye said I put Jay on it. But of course, I didn't hear Jay on it, so you don't know until you know. Like I didn't hear anything, and I did not even want to say, can I hear it?
While everyone with a verse on this track attempts to personify monster-like qualities, Nicki's tone and pure conviction behind every bar she spits truly sets her apart from every other section of this song. The outro ties this song back to the overall theme of this record, with Charlie Wilson providing beautiful background vocals. Justin Vernon sings about being rejected by society, just like Kanye was, to an extent where you just have to totally stop caring about what others think of you and realize that in the end, only God can judge you. By the end of this track, Kanye is stepping away from the limelight, going home, and letting go of his false idolization of fame. Track 7 is probably the most underrated on this album, that track being So Appalled. As Kanye has been attacked and abandoned in the very society that he was once a leader in, he spitefully looks back at the world that turned their backs on him as he steps away from the limelight. Swizz Beatz personifies Kanye's mood in the refrain, no longer caring about the judgment of others and holding an FTW mentality. Kanye and the other artists featured on this track are disgusted or appalled at the stereotypical rapper. Kanye was stereotyped as your stereotypical rapper during the media's coverage of the VMA incident, as I spoke on earlier. Ye specifically calls out MTV, who has a long reputation of not playing music videos for tracks that they deemed too urban.
Michael Jackson had to fight to get his videos on MTV because he was considered to be urban. This is Michael Jackson.
Kanye, unlike other artists in the rap game, only speaks on real shit, and he declares his dislike for the stereotypical rap lifestyle through Sci-Hi the Prince's lines on this track. The features on this track can all be considered veterans of hip-hop. You got RZA, Jay-Z, and Pusha T all taking shots and discussing the new wave of rap in the late 2000s. Jay-Z bashes all these beginners, speaking on his position as a living legend who is still active in the music world. Hove even compares himself to Harvey Dent from the Dark Knight Batman franchise.
You either die a hero, or you live long enough to see yourself become the villain.
Harvey, after trying to do the right thing in a villainous city like Gotham, eventually becomes the character Two-Face and loses his sanity. Just like Harvey Dent, Jay-Z has become the villain. He's no longer the underdog that everyone's rooting for, now he's the overrated veteran, as the culture has turned their backs on him. Pusha T has the third verse on this song, and his presence on this album, My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy, is really interesting to me. Kanye is a well-known Clips fan, the legendary hip-hop duo composed of Pusha T and his brother, No Malice. But as Pusha T began to branch out into a singles career in the music world, him and Kanye would link up in Hawaii. As Clips broke up, Ye would help Push establish himself as a solo artist. In the studio with Ye, Push would contribute to My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy while also working on his first solo mixtape, Fear of God, beginning one of the best hip-hop combos in recent memory. During his verse, Push speaks from the perspective of someone like Jay-Z, who has actually moved drugs and knows how the streets really are. The final verse comes from Sci-Hi the Prince, who actually wasn't planned to have a verse on this track.
He was tired, he works all day, so he's like, yo, I'm going, just think of a hook for me, think of a hook to put on here, so.
And I'm like, what's the name of it? And it was So Appalled. So I'm like, okay, I was like, okay, I'll just write something, like, ooh. So I wrote a hook for it. I have nothing to do, because they all left and went somewhere, so I just wrote a verse, rapped it, and told them to put it at the end of the song. So I'm still there for another 2 weeks. He's never went to the end of the song. 2 days later, after I get home, he's like, he calls me. He's like, yo, congratulations, you made the album. This verse was crazy. I was like, wow. So the next week he flies me to New York, and I was at the Power video shoot, and he was just like, yo, I let Jay-Z and them hit a record. I didn't press stop on the on the record, and your verse just came in, and Beyonce said, whoever that is, you need to sign him.
All verses on So Appalled mention some sort of relations with a girl, be that a hookup or something more serious, but track 8 truly takes things to a more personal level. Up until now on this record, Kanye had mainly been discussing his issues surrounding his controversies, cancellation, as well as toxic relationship with Fame. However, a big part of Fame, as Pusha T mentioned on his verse on So Appalled, is the social climbers and gold diggers who date celebrities to give themselves some clout. Track 8, Devil in a New Dress, sees Kanye detail a twisted relationship full of lust and false promises. This track samples the Smokey Robinson song, Will You Love Me Tomorrow? And again, we have a case where the sample used ties into the main theme of this track. Kanye and this girl's relationship is on thin ice due to his status as a celebrity. Being on tour, artists are constantly tempted with fans who try to be with them, and the separation can truly strain a relationship. This girl also had a false idea of what life in the limelight would be like, as Kanye wonders why she even got in the relationship with him to begin with if all of the issues that bother her are fame related. Ye also plays with his religious roots, saying that this girl makes him think of acts that are deemed sinful in the world of Christianity. In church, when people feel the Holy Spirit, they'll raise their hands to the sky. Kanye tells this girl to put her hands to the constellations and plays with the wording when saying sensation, making it sound like sin-sation. But like I said, this relationship between Ye and this girl is all based on the wrong things. Analyzing the lyrics of this track, Kanye knows that this girl doesn't love him for him. She doesn't love him for his personality. She's with him for his status. An amazing guitar solo by Mike Dean sends the listener into another universe, but just when you thought things couldn't get better on this track, in comes the only feature on this song. Rick Ross hops on this joint at the tail end of the song, but the original verse he wrote for this track didn't make the final cut. Kanye is known for encouraging his fellow artists to do their best work, and he would do the same with Rick Ross here, pushing him to write an even better verse.
As soon as I heard the beat, I wrote a verse to it right then.
Oh, right away.
I started just.
You wrote that verse right away?
Yeah, right.
That's a monster.
An hour later, no, the verse you heard ain't the verse that what it was. I wrote a verse, 2 or 3 verses right then, just to let Kanye hit a vibe. And I was like, this is my verse right here. This is the verse I want. He listened to it, walked off, came back an hour later. Rose, I know you. No, this is like the first time somebody ever told Rose, right? I know you. You could go harder. Whoa.
Is he a producer? He's a producer.
He closed the room. I said, this nigga crazy. And I went back in immediately, right then.
And wrote that verse we heard.
The verse you heard.
He was right. Wow. He was right. That's why Ye is a great producer.
No, without a doubt. He most definitely gonna challenge you.
In his verse on Devil in a New Dress, Rick Ross discusses him and Ye's longtime friendship, as well as his issues with women in his past.
I'm making love to the angel of death. Catching feelings, never stumble, retracing my steps.
On Devil in a New Dress, Kanye mainly discusses the problems he has with this girl, only briefly mentioning the flaws that she sees in him. He follows this up with a moment of clarity, opening up about his flaws on track 9, Runaway. The iconic piano riff begins, leading to a beat drop that awakens Kanye to self-reflection. This track acts as an apology for Ye's personality, brought to the light by the 2009 VMA incident. If you haven't picked up on it yet, this girl that Kanye's talking about on this album symbolizes Ye's relationship with the general public. But Ye can't change the way he is. He's a douchebag. To some, he's an asshole. Some people even go as far to call him a scumbag. Kanye will never change. He will always be true to himself. So he calls for this girl to run away from him in order for her to protect herself and her feelings.
Baby, I
I got a plan. Run away fast as you can.
Ye then details the shitty things he did throughout the relationship, constantly fucking up, and instead of taking responsibility, he blames the poor girl he cheated on. Kanye is his own worst enemy. His ego, his perfectionist mindset, and his obnoxious attitude, all pointed out by the public, bring anyone he tries to be with romantically down. But no matter what he does, how crazy he gets, she won't just run away. The public won't stop shining the lights on him and giving him the attention his ego thrives off of. Pusha T has an outstanding verse on this track, and Kanye actually prepped him for what he wanted the verse to be about before Push picked up the pen.
It was just, conversations about relationships at the time, we were having. He was like, yo, your perspective is sort of dope, like, your perspective would fit really good on this song, but I just really want you to take the stance of the asshole. People don't know I wrote that verse like 4 times because he kept chanting like, I need more douchebag, I need more douchebag.
Pusha T absolutely personifies the villain in this relationship, constantly teasing the girl with the idea of her leaving. Because of Push's status, if this girl leaves him, she's also saying goodbye to this life of luxury that she's become very comfortable with. Push is essentially saying, I'm the best you're ever gonna get, which is just about as narcissistic as a person can get in a relationship. He's essentially saying, yeah, I know I treated you like shit. I'm not gonna do anything about it. I'm not gonna change my behavior because I know you don't have the power to leave. He's completely abusing his power, and he's aware of it. Push references a Diddy line with his final words on his verse.
I'm just young, rich, and tasteless. P.
Push, just like Ye, accepts his identity as a douche, but decides it's just who he is. It's one thing to be an asshole, but to be openly aware of it and opt to do nothing about it, that's a whole new level of being a dick and just shows how brilliant Pusha T is as a lyricist. Kanye comes in with his third and final verse, now worried his girl might do what's best for herself and leave him for good. And the title of the track, along with the pain-filled outro, leads us to believe that she did just that. For starters, the track is titled Runaway as a single word, not in the verb tense of run space away. Also, Kanye's voice on the outro is inaudible, personifying the sounds of sorrow. He has officially lost his girl and now he is all alone. With vocoder vocals, Kanye mumbles in pain as he has lost everything thanks to his ego and personality. Now, Kanye feels as if being himself gets him in trouble. When he speaks his mind, people either write him off as crazy or simply can't understand. So for 4 minutes, Ye sounds like he is saying nonsense to personify the idea that he feels misunderstood. Kanye is almost always ahead of his time, be that in music, fashion, or general problems with society. The fans who are aware of this song, aware of this album, can kind of understand what he's saying through these inaudible vocals. You can hear the melody if you listen closely. But if you're an outsider who isn't down with Kanye's vision and is hearing Runaway for the first time, you feel like this 4 minutes is a waste of your time. It's inaudible. You're perplexed by the creative decision to put this in the song, and you can't pick up on anything he's saying.
Also, the thin, horrid, distorted vocal solo that is manipulated, auto-tuned, vocoded, I'm not sure, at the very end of this thing, really wears out its welcome very fast. It does not need to be that long. It is not interesting for even half the time that it goes. If it was a guitar that was generating this sound, I would just say it sounds awful, but because it's a voice, I'm supposed to, wow, wow, freak out.
As the vocals fade and the instrumental comes to an end, Kanye is left with nothing, as he spirals out of control in an attempt to fill the void in his heart. Track 10 sees this manic behavior in action with the song Hell of a Life. This song is purely done by Mike Dean and Kanye West, and in my opinion is one of Kanye's most slept on songs throughout his entire discography. I think the song is overlooked just due to the lewd nature of the lyrics and overall topic of the track. Ye is essentially avoiding his feelings and sadness by watching porn. The guitar on this track, sampled from the Mojo Men's song She's My Baby, perfectly encapsulates the manic state of Kanye at this point in the story. Kanye truly takes us on a ride detailing his venue of escapism in watching pornography and describing the wild fantasies he thinks about while being aroused. On the hook, Ye uses the same melody from Black Sabbath's Iron Man. Kanye has spiraled into a rock star lifestyle and is constantly contradicting himself and his morals. Kanye is fantasizing about marrying a porn star, thinking entirely through lustful lenses in an attempt to recover from the girl that he drove away. I also have to point out how early Kanye was in his support of sex workers. Especially in American society, people will shit on anyone who's a porn star or in the field of sex work, but then go behind a closed door and watch porn themselves. Kanye has critiqued American society a lot, and again, he is shining a light on the hypocrisy. Porn stars get a lot of unnecessary hate, and I think Kanye, as a celebrity, can relate to that after becoming public enemy number one following the 2009 VMAs. But the lust-driven ride ends as Ye breathes heavily. The fantasy is over as Ye is forced back to face reality. You simply cannot run away from your problems, and Ye comes to terms with that on track 11, Blame Game. The piano on the instrumental, sampled from Aphex Twin's track Avril 14th, sets the gloomy mood of waking up hungover and reminiscing about the love lost that you spent the whole night trying not to think about. But again, I must remind you that while you can interpret what Ye is saying to be about a relationship with a girl, this whole album's narrative really parallels Kanye's relationship with fame. Whose fault is it that Kanye is the way he is? Sure, he does things he shouldn't do and says things he shouldn't say, but would he be doing them if the cameras weren't constantly on him? Kanye blames the media for not running away and giving him attention while they continue to cover his actions and call him a monster. In reality, celebrity culture, specifically in America, as well as Ye's obnoxious attitude, are both equally at fault. Kanye throughout this entire record is pointing out the flaws of being famous, while at the same time, he absolutely loves the attention. No matter if you take this track as being about Kanye and the media's relationship or Ye and a girl's relationship, this song is absolutely brilliant. John Legend sings on the hook, showing how this relationship dissolved into nothing but two people constantly blaming each other over issues rather than coming together to solve them. In his first verse, Kanye is discussing how much he misses this girl despite the fact that his relationship with her was really rocky. Then, in the second verse, he describes the good times. After a breakup, especially if a relationship was toxic, people love to go back and think of the good times they had with the other person, just as Ye is doing here. Ye is pawning for the good old days, missing this girl even though she did shit, like falsely accusing him of abusing her. By the end of his verse, Ye is detailing her faults and coming to terms with the idea that she just wasn't right for him. Mentioning how she wanted the limelight, not love, and any feelings were false as the love was simply a lie. Kanye learns the hard way that this girl has moved on, as he calls her and she doesn't answer, but somehow she accidentally calls him back, either butt dialing or whatever, and he hears her with her new guy. The new boyfriend is played brilliantly by Chris Rock, and although this skit at the end is pretty comedic, you still get the sense of it being a tragedy as the melodic piano remains in the background. We could see from her and her new man's interactions that she has learned a lot from being with Kanye. What a dude likes in bed, how he likes to be talked to, and what he likes to wear fashion-wise. This is an obvious parallel to how a lot of celebrities and even fellow artists copy things from Kanye. Even though a lot of his fellow artists diss Kanye following the 2009 VMA incident, they still feel his impact through his innovations he's done through the music industry and remain inspired whether they want to admit it or not. Although a lot of people attempted to write Kanye off in 2009, his presence is still felt in numerous fields. Yeezy has without a doubt impacted pop culture, even if he was successfully blackballed from the industry. But now that he knows his girl has moved on, Kanye is all alone. Track 12 closes out our story as Ye is lost in the world. The intro, performed by Justin Vernon, speaks on self-isolation from society. Ye is in the woods, away from the limelight, similar to how he traveled after the VMAs and camped out in Hawaii to create this record. Now, no longer with his partner, Ye is alone as he branches back into the world. As he travels back to civilization after his self-induced isolation, how will society accept him? The beat drops after the melodic intro as Ye breaks into his only verse on this closing track. The words from this verse here were originally a poem that Ye wrote for Kim Kardashian. While the two were not together at this time, Ye was just ending things with former girlfriend Amber Rose when he wrote this poem. The breakup potentially helped Ye write the more toxic cuts on the album, such as Blame Game, but the record ends on an uplifting note, as Ye decides to run from the fame and chase true love with a newfound love interest. Ye speaks on the idea that in order for a relationship to be successful, you both need to be able to acknowledge when each other is wrong. Opposing his tactics used with his former ex on Blame Game, Ye now understands that you must be able to put your pride to the side, have some humility, and admit when you're wrong. In Hollywood, in the limelight, it's hard to find true happiness. You truly live in a fake life, which Ye plans to escape. In comes potentially the most important sample on this album from Gil Scott-Heron's comment number 1. Heron was a musician and a poet, and he ties the theme of this album up nicely as his words are surrounded by tribal drums. Lost in the World fades seamlessly into the final track, Who Will Survive in America. This track is purely Gil Scott-Heron's words as he describes the bleak future of America. Scott's words deem the American dream a false promise, perfectly aligning with Kanye's view of fame and fortune. America promises liberty, freedom, and justice, but has common occurrences of abuses of power, strict regulations, and discrimination. Fame promises fortune and power, but once the eyes of the world are all on you, Kanye begins to wonder if it was all worth it. Just as Heron says here on the outro, all he wants is a good home, a good family life with a wife and kids to feed. Kanye knows that it would be damn near impossible to have a normal family life with his status. If he has kids, they're going to have cameras stuck in their face by the paparazzi from the moment they're born. And as he's already discussed on this album, fame does nothing but help strain two people in a relationship. The vibe changes as Ye contemplates his fate and will do anything to escape fame. What was promised to be the good life has turned into a beautiful, dark, and twisted fantasy that he cannot survive.
Who will survive in America? Who will survive in America?